Welcome to Pussy Protagonist. I'm your host, Isabel. This is the podcast show where we discuss about sex, sexuality, sexual desire through personal experiences and personal stories. I just think it's really interesting to start this podcast show because I do have a lot of questions and concerns regarding to this topic. And I always come to my friends to talk about it, and I thought it would be amazing to put this on air and to have other people listening to this and also be inspired and also be heard. And so for the first episode, I thought of maybe we should discuss about sort of the differences on the way people talk about sex, sexuality, and sexual desire in a Eastern versus Western way. I'm Asian, so I'm obviously representing like the Eastern side. And growing up, I definitely think my cultural background influences me on the thoughts that I have on the topic. And so I have my very good friend, an amazing woman, here with me today, and we're gonna have a little discussion. So, hi Brenda, you can introduce yourself a little bit.
I'm Brenda. I'm also going to school in the United States. I'm from Indonesia, so I'm kind of repping Southeast Asia.
Right.
And but still the East. Still the East.
I'm more from the North. I'm from Taiwan. But yeah, let's get started, I guess. I feel like the first thing we have to like trace it all back is, you know, like our childhood. Like how does our childhood influences us in a way to talk about the topic. So, you know, like in your memory, did like your family or the people around you talk about sex or sexuality in like a open or comfortable space?
Well, I mean, even like the fact that I don't remember anything just kind of means like no, not really. I don't think it's something that, I don't know, it doesn't come out at like dinner events, you know, it's not something that we talk about openly. It's something that I feel like if I had a question, I'd ask my mom and she'd answer, but it's not necessarily a topic that like would come up in conversations ever. I don't see why that conversation would ever come up. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like a big deal back home.
So it's like if no one talks about it, then we just like, let's just not talk about it.
Yeah, like we know, like we're not like, you know, we learned about in biology like how a baby is made, but we're not like, oh shit, like I need to know the whole process of it. Like it's not necessarily something that we talk about, I don't think. Yeah.
So have you ever like been like not verbally punished, but in a way of like, have you ever openly talking about sex, but like your family or like people around you were like surprised or like they like resent that you were talking about it to them?
I don't think that has ever happened to me just because I personally don't bring that up ever. But I remember, like, I guess, like, back in high school, like, a friend of mine, we were 15-something. Like, even the fact that she came to me and a couple friends and she said that she kissed her boyfriend, it was, like, a huge deal. We were like, why would you tell us that? That's, like, something so personal. It sounds kind of insane that I'm in America and this is, like, it's an everyday occurrence to, like, people, but in like Indonesia, that was like a huge thing that she was kissing someone when she was 15 with her boyfriend, might I add. So I was just like, yeah, she wasn't necessarily punished, but it was just really interesting to like see like our friends really like giving her a hard time for it, which you know shouldn't happen. And like whenever I come to my parents about things that even is like remotely sexual, they're like, oh, why are you asking us this? They're not necessarily mad, they don't punish me about things, but it's like just something that's so like you need an explanation as to why you're bringing this up. Like it's yeah
I feel like for me personally it's also like what you said of like it's the idea like, oh, you will know it when you grow up, like
yeah,
like come on, like you'll figure it out. Like
I mean they're not wrong too, right? Yeah. It's kind of like it's just something that you just kind of figure it out by yourself. At the same time, like it would have been like, you know, helpful to like talk about it when you're younger, not necessarily because I want to start it when I'm young, but it's like just like that knowledge instead of just like having everyone think, oh, it's such a bad thing, but like why, you know?
Yeah. And I think, well, because the reason like I bring up this question is because I've seen people being so the story was like, I think it was also when I was a little kid, and I was with my mom, like at the mall or something, and there's this like little girl. She was probably like, I don't know, like 5 or 6. Like she's like a toddler, and I remember this was like so clear in my mind. But she was talking to her mom as well, and she was saying, "Mom, why does like my like she doesn't even know the word vagina." But she was like, "Mom, why is, like, my crotch is, like, down there? Like, why is it so itchy?"
Yeah.
And she was asking in, like, such pure and, like, genuine way.
Yeah,
and it's just, like, your body part, right? But then, like, her mom, literally, when she said it, slapped her.
Oh, no.
And she was like, "Don't you dare say that again in public."
Yeah.
And she was, like, a 5-year-old and does not know anything about. Like, and it just struck me in a way of, like, wow. Like, in a sense that this kind of topic is just so you're not supposed to like bring up in like a public scene or like even just talking to your parents about it. And like I feel like for a 5-year-old, like getting that messages like really does
get body shames them.
Right. Yeah.
I don't necessarily even think it's like sex that is so shamed upon or like tabooed upon. It's more like our bodies as well. It's just like we're growing up, I guess, like I'm always told at least to like cover, like wear pants that aren't that short, you know, wear something that like covers my boobs. It's like it's just, you know, there are body parts, so we like my mom would always tell me to like, oh, like that's yours, like you have to like keep it like private, which like again like it's not, you know, like if that's what you feel, you do you. Like I'm not gonna wear revealing clothes as well, but that's just because of my comfortability with like my own body. But it's like if you are constantly told that when you were young but you don't feel that way, like if you want to flaunt your boobs, I don't give a shit, like do whatever you want. Also she's 5,
exactly,
like she's like tiny, like, and also this is genuinely like that was just like a health question,
right?
So I mean I don't know,
and it's normal, like it's your body, it's supposed to.
I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
So, and I just, how about like media or education, like growing up, like reading books or like watching movies or like watching television shows, what kind of information did you think that they give you in terms of like when it's about sex and sexuality?
Books. Grew up reading really like young adult books, so that did not exist. Like I don't think I remember reading anything related to that. I did watch a lot of movies. I really like movies. I think whenever I watch scenes in the cinema, I remember they would cut to like, if it's like a very like make out, like steam, not even steamy, just like the basic of like the most basic of making out, like they usually cut it out, which is, you know, whatever. Obviously no sex scenes, those are cut out. I don't even know. Even if it's rated R, it's usually because of violence. They cut out a lot of the sex scenes in Indonesia. But like when we watch like DVDs, let's say, because my mom gets a lot of DVDs for me because she knows how much I love them, it's like they wouldn't cut it, but I would immediately know, just like as a child, to like cover my eyes in front of my mom. Not even just because, oh my god, like I'm so shy. No, like it's just like a common thing where it's like, we're kids, like we're not supposed to see this.
Right.
I don't know when that age like barrier stops, but I just like even till now when like I watch Game of Thrones with my mom and it has like the most fucking sex scenes in the world, like I still close my eyes even though I like lived in America and probably have seen worse. Like I still do, just out of like, just to give my mom that sense of comfort that like I know that this is like sensationalized and this is like bad, like you know, I'm not wildly like sexually active. Like I feel like if I just watched it, my mom would just assume I watch porn every day, which is not true. But like I still do that. So I don't think sex was a big thing in media back home, and I don't think it is in general in Asia. And we didn't really have sex ed in school. There's just, I don't know how.
So like also like your teachers and like any like mentors or adults, like do they discuss this kind of topic like outside of in an outside of classroom sort of situation?
I never had a teacher that discussed that ever. I don't know in what context they would. I don't know, like I feel like in America it's more like sex ed, but we didn't really have that. We had like we had a health class, we had a social studies class, but we never really, it just wasn't a thing that popped up. We were taught, like, consent and stuff, so that was good. Like, that was really good to, like, ask permission before, like, we even kissed. Like, that's like really, like, good basic stuff. But like sex itself, I don't think, like, I think I've heard about it from just, like, my friends, and it's like, oh, haha, like, I like read, like, you know, like, porn, I watched porn and shit like that, and it just comes up in conversations, and I, like, hear from it, but it wasn't necessarily something I, like, that we all, like, pursued. Like, we didn't really want to, like, we didn't want to learn about it, because it was just, like, seen as, like, we don't have to know this anyways until we get married, and that's not gonna be in a long ass time, so, like, it just wasn't something I was concerned about.
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like for me, like, in Taiwan, I mean, it's like, come on, like, health education sucks already. Like, it's not really like an Eastern or a Western way, like, but in terms of, like, at least for myself, like, growing up, I feel like we definitely, like, lack the knowledge of, you know, like, talking about sex. Like, you know the body parts and, like, how it's done, but there wasn't any educations of, like, how to do it properly, or, like, how to be safe. I mean, not in that context, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for me, I'm not saying, like, people don't value sex education but, because, you know, the idea of, like, education in Asia, like, people want it, like, you know, like, they focus on score, they focus on...
I feel like it's kind of... I don't think it's because of that. I personally think it's just because of, like, the idea of opening that world up to children sort of, like, makes them think that, oh, like, you should start this because we taught you this.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's why we didn't really have that in school, compared to Western culture, where they think, like, they're already doing it anyway, so we might as well teach them how to be safe. And in Asia, it's more like, don't do it.
Right.
So we're not going to teach you how to do it, so then you
won't do it.
Which they're not wrong. Like, a lot of us, like, we, growing up, like, because we're not exposed to it, we didn't really, like, have any sexual encounters, because we're just, like, it's not a thing that, like, matters a lot. I feel like.
Yeah, I think you definitely brought up the point of, it's like, we don't encourage you to do it. So that's why we just kind of, like, shut the door of, like, so you're like, you don't need to know, because you won't do it anyways. Like, you're not supposed to do it. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. So I feel like another aspect of why I feel like in Asia or in, like, Eastern society, people are more sort of, like, not able to talk about this is, like, maybe in a gender spectrum. Do you think that gender influences your behavior on talking about sex and sexuality?
What do you mean?
So it's, like, just for my personal, like, how I think about it, it's that I feel like even growing up, like, you know, guys or, like, boys, they were able to talk about porn, or, like, you know, like, in a joking way.
Yeah.
But then if, like, that's say we're talking about, like, what did you watch last night? Something like that. Like, we're not allowed. But for guys, they're allowed to do it. Not allowed, but in a way of, like, people are just like, they're guys or women. Like, they're exploring. But then women can't.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I see.
So, do you think that it happens to you personally?
I think there's that, I guess, like, stereotype where it's like, oh, boys are just dumb, girls are just really, like, girls are supposed to be, you know, we should look after our image, we should be, you know, very shy, very polished, very, like, just, you know, like, we have all our shit together, so, like, you know, better than to do this, and boys are more like, do whatever the fuck you want, because you guys are dumb anyways. And it's like, it's not necessarily, like, society puts that standards on us. I think it's just more like, people just make fun of, like, oh, boys are just dumb, so if they said that, it's fine. But if a girl does it, it's like, oh my god, like, you're supposed to be this perfect like, character. I grew up, like, with boys. Like, a lot of my friends were boys, and I had, like, one good female friend, and I had, like, 5 male friends, and that was, like, usually, like, I hung out with, like, the 7 of us, like, hung out together every day after school. And I remember every time, like, the guys would, like, say something sexual, like a sexual innuendo, like a joke or something, like, my friend would always, she would just, like, they're just so dumb. It's just because we're friends with boys, but like that's not true. Like whenever the two of us are with our like other female friends, like obviously they bring up sex as well. It's just like when it comes to like boys talking about it feels so like normal,
right?
But when it's like with us girls, it's more like, oh my god, like this is such a big deal, like it's a secret, like don't tell anyone. Meanwhile with boys, it's like you can tell people, it's still gross, but like you can tell other people because they're just dumb,
right?
Which I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I would count it as a stereotype. I think it's just more like we have lower standards on boys in general. So
oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I also experienced that like in middle school of like how like there was this dude in my class, like he was just talking about like he literally pulled up porn on his phone and like I don't know, I think it was like music class or something, and he was like watching under the door, and like the teacher found out, but it was like she like kind of like made it not a big, she's like guys, come on, like but if you think of it now, it's like, so if I was in that position, or if it was a girl in that position who is watching porn, like what, you know, like would she get punished, like, or would she get judged because of that, because she is a woman and she watches porn, or like she was trying to explore that? By that context, I think it's worth thinking. Yeah. So I also think it's like the idea in terms of like why gender is so not separated, but like the characteristic of gender is very like obvious. It's like how, you know, like in the Chinese culture there's this idea of like, you know, arranged marriage. I don't know if you heard of that, but it was like back in like really long history. But I mean, people don't do it now, but it's like I feel like
they
that,
still do sometimes.
Yeah, they still do, like even my grandparents.
And I feel like even if it's not like necessarily like an official arranged marriage, there's times where it's like, oh, your daughter's still single at the age of 28. That sucks. My son's still single at the age of 31. Like, let's set them up. It's not necessarily like an official arranged marriage, but it's still an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
And what's up with that?
I just feel like it's just like in that way. I feel like, you know, because women are like, you know, aging and like reproductive and stuff, but in a sense that I feel like women are sometimes seen as more of like a reproduction tools. And like back in the history, like you know, like if a woman has sex, it's because she needs to get pregnant, she needs to have children. In terms of, we sort of like not value their sexual needs. So I feel like that's why, you know.
For me personally, I don't think it's because like we don't value a woman's sexual needs. I think in Asian culture in general, not just women but male, like sexual needs are supposed to just be repressed, because it's like because it is for just reproductive. But I don't think it's necessarily just for the women. Like even with men, it's like I don't know what they do behind closed doors, but in the culture, the way we talk about sex, it's like it's for babies, it's for father and mother to have babies,
right?
But it's not necessarily just like a woman thing. Like obviously like the arranged marriage thing is a whole different thing, just because like yes, a woman may be seen as like, oh, if she can't have a baby, that would be bad for like an arranged marriage or whatever. But the same thing with men, it's like if they don't have enough, like if they don't have a stable job, it's like they're seen as the same thing. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think the arranged marriage thing kind of counts to that, but it's like I agree that like most of the time sex is only seen in Asian culture as like a tool to make babies, because I feel like that's the like textbook definition of sexual reproduction is to reproduce. So that's like that's a huge thing in like Asia in general, I think. But I think kind of just moving forward, like now that it's like 2019, I think it's seen less as a reproductive thing, but it's still seen as like a thing where you should do it when you're married. Like that's
or like in a close relationship.
Not even that. Like I feel like back home, like you have to be married. Like even like when my parents like discuss like, oh my god, like this person like definitely have had sex before marriage, is such like a shitty...
Is it like more of like that in Indonesia? Because in Taiwan, I feel like not that.
I mean, like being from Jakarta, obviously like is so different from any other place in Indonesia, because Jakarta is such like a metropolitan like city. But also growing up in a family that cares a lot about our image, who all my friends are very well off and like a lot of your families also so like care so much about their image, like that idea of virginity makes their price even higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's like,
I get it.
why would I, like, I always hear this thing where it's like, why would I let my daughter lose her virginity to someone who's like not willing to marry them?
Right.
So it's like, it's seen as a very prideful thing. I don't necessarily know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. I don't think I agree with that. But obviously, like, some people actually like still believe that. And a lot of them still believe that like virginity is a part of like what makes you so special.
Right.
So yeah, but it's not necessarily seen as like a reproductive thing. It's more like that's your virginity. That makes you worth 80 times more.
Right.
And we care so much about our image that we're like, we need that.
Yeah, so I feel like that connects to like sort of the cultural aspect that we're talking about of like, I learned this in like my communication classes, but it's like, it's interesting how they sort of, you know how like the Asians or like the Easterns, they have this idea. It's like we're much more community-based society, and it's like what you said, it's like your behavior influences your surrounding. Like you are a representation of your family, your ancestor, like your everything. Like you have a baggage you're supposed to carry, not just like you yourself. And so like for me, like growing up, like my mom would like always, when I do something, she would always be like, if you did something successful, then you're gonna honor your family. Vice versa, if you did something or you said something that is considered to be, you know, that's gonna be like a bad image, then it's not just about you, it's about the entire like family. So I get that. So I feel like why do you think that in like Asian culture like pursue sex and like sexual desire as like an inside the house topic?
Because as you said, it's like we care a lot about our image. It's like even to the point where it's like the people you hang out with represents who you really are. Like my friends, and I remember whenever we like would go out, like I have a best friend who like she's very confident with her sexuality. She's very confident about who she is. She doesn't give a shit about like tradition, like barriers, and she wears whatever the fuck she wants. And it's like a lot of people are like, oh, she's hanging out with like a girl who's like sexually active. Like that's terrible. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like what she does is whatever she wants to do. Like it doesn't really affect me in any way because that's not my business. But it's like, I guess if you talk about sex, again, it just like means that you're sexually active. I think the way like the Asian mindset works is that if you just don't talk about it, you've never done it. Right. Or like if you don't talk about it, then like we'll just don't talk. Like it's just not a thing that like we should talk about. And it's like obviously like if I talk about it to like my family, like not even my family, to like other people, obviously it would look bad on me just because they would think that I'm like sexually active, and then they would like, oh my god, your daughter is sexually active, that makes you a bad mom. And then I don't know, it goes again and again, like it's a cycle. And like, oh, like your friend is like talking about sex publicly, what does that represent her, like that she's just sexually active, you know, shit like that. But I think it's like because my mom would also do that. She was like, now that you're like studying the state, like you're not just like in Taiwan, so she was like, you know, people like do things differently, but like make sure that you still sort of like don't go too far on like you know, sex and sexual shit. Like I still make sure my posts on, like, I'm a very private person, everything on my social media is very private. I try not to like show anything related to my life necessarily that can harm me, not even harm, just like I don't publicly show my private life just for personal reasons. But it's like, I know for a fact that if I even remotely like posted like a picture of me and like someone I was dating kissing, or like me and my partner doing like, you know, like just like very things that are seen as like such like taboos, like even just kissing, or like even writing comments that even has like a slight sexual innuendo, like I know that my mom or like my parents are gonna be so like mad about it, not because they're actually mad, but just because like, oh my god, what are people gonna think when they see it? And like I don't know why, but like I think it's valid as well, just because like growing up, like again, like, we always just care so much about our image, and like, this is seen as a bad thing, so we don't want a bad image.
Right.
So yeah, it's just kind of like linked.
So then, what differences do you see in terms of like Western cultures? Like, because I know you like come to the state for like in high school. Like,
Yeah.
what are like the major changes you've seen?
Well, I came to the States to finish high school, but I went to a community college. I didn't necessarily, like, I was still with like a lot of Indo people, but it was just so weird because I remember like we would be in class and someone would make like a sexual joke and my friend would just be like, oh, like, it's not even funny, like, it's you know, it's kind of like just dumb, like, white people are just dumb because they talk about that shit all the time because they're horny all the time. It's like a basic stereotype that like white people just are like, you know, they always like make sure that I know that they're open with it. They don't necessarily like push me to talk about it, but they're like, hey, like, you know, like, we're talking about it as if it's a normal everyday thing, which it is.
Yeah.
So like, you can talk to it about us if you want, which makes me like really like, you know, comfortable to like, obviously like they're more experienced in a lot of things that I am, just because I personally don't indulge in that life due to like not only cultural reasons but personal reasons. So it's like, you know, like, I'm glad to know that there's people who have been exposed to more education about it than I have, and they're willing to share that information with me. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So why do you think, like, in terms of Western culture, like, people are more willing to openly talk about sex in general?
It's just going back to the idea of like, yeah, like, if you know, like, if we constantly are exposed to it in the media or are constantly exposed to it in books, everything, then we get more like information. And like, obviously we would want to talk about it more.
Right.
But because we weren't, so it
felt like something that's not okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
Cool. So, you know, like, in general, what would you suggest, you know, anyone or any woman who's afraid to like explore themselves and like express their sexuality and sexual desire?
I think it's okay if you're still very like afraid to express and explore that world. It's terrifying, especially growing up knowing that it's so tabooed on. Like, it was terrifying for me to even like talk about sex to like my friends, because it's like, oh my god, like, are they gonna shame me or whatever? Like, it's perfectly okay to be afraid, perfectly normal. I do think though, like, if you do want to, like, if you do choose to like openly express your sexuality, openly like pursue that, like, obviously like do whatever the fuck you want, like, don't care about what society has to put on you, don't care about what these standards have set on you, like, make your own standards, do whatever you want as long as you're doing it safe, which is honestly like, I would rather have you talk about it with people and know what to do than just be reckless and like do stupid shit.
So it has to be better it has to be better for people to be able to openly talk about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I feel like if you don't want to, it's not a conversation that you need to have. If it's not a conversation you want to have, it's obviously like, don't have that conversation.
Like, still be respectful.
Yeah, be respectful, but it's like,
oh god,
I just like, I guess like everyone should know that it's not something to be ashamed of. It's a perfectly human nature. If you want to talk about it, be confident about it, you know. It's you, it's just human nature, it's your body, be proud of it. And yeah, and like, I feel like if everyone were just open to talk about it, then it wouldn't be something that's so tabooed on, like, because it shouldn't be, you know.
Right.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think this is really great. Like, we're talking about this. Like, I mean, we've had this like kind of conversation for so many times in our life. Like,
it's really different, I guess, like, talking about it with you than it's like talking about it with like my American friends who are just like,
definitely.
Wow, like, you never had this discussion.
Yeah, because it's like, we're both sort of like standing on like the Asian spectrums, and like, you know, like, talking to you about it but in like a Western sort of perspective is like very different.
Yeah, like, if you had this interview with literally any of my other friends who are not in the States or Australia or just like Western culture in general, I feel like you would have a very different answer. And I understand their perspective, I understand my Western friends' perspectives. I kind of stand in the middle, where I'm like, I understand if people are openly talking about it, do not give a shit. I just personally like to mind my own business, so I don't really care to talk about my shit. But it's like, again, if you want to talk about it. If you don't, then don't.
Right.
It's just like whatever you choose to do. Don't be held back by whatever your parents tell you to do. Like, who the fuck cares about your image? If you like your image, other people will like your image. So don't worry about it.
Wow, that's deep. Right?
That's not that. I think the ambulance sound just kind of like got me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that this is being discussed because I feel like definitely a lot of people like out there, like they probably have the same questions as we do, but in terms of like, are people openly enough to talk about it? Are they even openly enough to want to know the answers, like want to know what they want about it?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. I just hope like this inspired some of you all who's listening right now and just, like it's not a scary thing, but like I feel like because we grew up and not, again, like we're not encouraged to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why it makes the exploration a little harder.
Yeah.
I think it's just like I hope that it inspired some of you all who is listening right now, because it's like, again, like going back to what we're talking about, it's like it's harder for us to even talk about, like it's not an encouraged thing, so it just makes like this whole explorations like even harder. And yeah, I hope you guys like this first episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. I mean, thanks for being supportive and like want to talk about it. Yeah. All right. So I guess be powerful and be yourself. Be that pussy you want to be. I'll see you guys so soon on the next podcast.